A lot of guys in the calisthenics community have this made up idea in their mind that calisthenics is the almighty best method of training and that it is somehow superior to lifting weights. So as someone that is into calisthenics, I'm here to tell you that it is simply not true.
It's the yellow Diablo, cooler than gelatos. Slide into that bitch and show her how to sing legato.
Before we start, let me just prove to you real quick that I am in fact someone that is into calisthenics and that I'm not just pretending for the views. Here are some of my credentials. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's debunk some of the most common arguments that people use to argue that calisthenics is better than lifting weights. I'm going to show you clips of people actually saying these arguments too, so don't go thinking that I'm just taking these out of my imagination.
This is the superior way of training.
Better than weights, bro?
Yep, that's right. Let's start with the typical exercises focused on. Calisthenics focuses on compound movements.
Essentially, this guy goes on to say that calisthenics mainly focuses on compound movements, whereas weightlifters don't do them as much. This is a very common claim amongst people that promote calisthenics, but it isn't very accurate. Some of the most popular gym exercises, like the bench press, the overhead press, the squat, and the deadlift, they're all compound movements, so that point doesn't really stand. Then we can talk about the fact that on one hand, when you're lifting weights in the gym, you have the option to decide whether you want to do more compound movements or more isolation movements. On the other hand, with calisthenics, the options for isolation movements are very limited. So how can you argue that having more options to decide from is worse than being limited to one type of exercise like in calisthenics? Let me paint you a picture. Imagine you have two guys, one that lifts weights and one that only does calisthenics. Say they've been training for a few years and now they notice that, oh, my side delts are lacking a little bit. They're smaller and weaker in proportion to the rest of my body. The weightlifter can decide to start doing more lateral raises with cables, with dumbbells, or with a machine to isolate the side delt and have it catch up with the rest of his body. But the calisthenic guy, what options does he have? Not much when it comes to only body weight. Moving on, we have the idea that calisthenics will get you shredded and that it is the best style of training for that goal. Now that once again is not entirely true. Being lean really comes down to your calorie intake and your energy expenditure during the day. It has little to do with your training style. Now you might be asking yourself, well, how come the vast majority of calisthenics athletes that we see all have such low body fat percentages? Well, we must understand that correlation does not equal causation. Most calisthenics athletes are lean because it is an advantage in the sport, but doing calisthenics doesn't directly make you lean. It's kind of the same way as when you see basketball players in the NBA, they're all tall. That's because it's an advantage in the sport. But playing basketball in and of itself does not make you tall. The last point I want to address is transferability. A lot of calisthenics athletes seem to believe that their strength that comes from bodyweight training transfers well to lifting weights. And that I agree with. But a lot of these people seem to believe that the opposite isn't true. They think that lifting weights doesn't transfer well to calisthenics. Take this clip of Chris Heria, for example.
Weight training does not translate into calisthenics. It does not translate into body weight control, body weight training, relative strength.
I fully disagree with this. Lifting weights can 100% facilitate your calisthenics journey. An advanced lifter can push and pull weights way over their body weight. Do you really think that that strength won't have any transferability to calisthenics? Obviously they won't be able to planche right away, but that's because the planche has a skill component to it as well. But I think it's pretty obvious to everyone that someone who has been lifting weights for a long time will have a better starting point for the planche than someone who has never trained in their life. So that clearly disproves the fact that there is zero transferability. At the end of the day, if you're doing any form of resistance training, whether it's with your body weight or with weight training, you will be getting stronger. And strength transfers to any sport or training style that requires strength. Let me give you a concrete example of someone who proves that lifting weights can transfer to calisthenics. This is just some guy that I see on TikTok once in a while, but as you can see, he is into powerlifting. His whole account is him lifting, and yet, without any prior calisthenics training, he can do muscle ups with more weight than a lot of calisthenics athletes out there. It's clear that the raw strength that he developed from lifting heavy ass weights has translated to him being able to do calisthenics feats. Now don't get me wrong, I did not make this video to make calisthenics look bad. As I said in the beginning, I myself do calisthenics and there's a reason why I'm still at it till this day. I absolutely love it. I just hate this superiority complex that some people have. I'm all for promoting calisthenics and its benefits, but not when it's at the expense of other training styles. Because then people limit themselves to doing only calisthenics when they could be benefiting from combining multiple styles. So that's where I'm gonna end today's video. Do you agree or disagree with me? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, consider liking and subscribing, and share this video to your favorite calisthenics creators and see if they agree with me or not. Peace.
Thinking me, wonder if you missing me. These days I can't fucking sleep, it's bad, I'm out here living dreams.